Okay, so we're going to start recording this Zoom meeting, and I'll just start by thanking everybody for joining us for this first in a series of 5 Zoom meetings. We wanted to provide an opportunity for student affairs, student services folks to get together in a statewide way, share innovations, ideas, challenges, how you're meeting those challenges head on, especially now in this remote instruction, remote delivery of services environment. We know that the colleges have been given the green light to start the reopening process, but in these different stages, there are going to be limited things that we'll be able to do. I very much appreciate our colleagues at Ocean County College and Sussex County Community College for volunteering to lead the discussion today. I'm Jake Farbin with the Council, Center for Student Success. Thank you all so much. This has evolved out of really a presentation that Keith did for us, Dr. Kirkland did for us from Essex County College. He and his team gave a broad overview of a lot of the work that Essex County College is doing in the student services, student affairs aspects in this new brief, temporary, we hope, in our lifetimes, reality. And because of the success of that, we wanted to do some specific deep dives. So with that, let me turn this over to Jerry and Kathleen, and thank you all once again. I'm gonna mute. You won't hear from me for a while, and thank you very much, folks.
All right, thank you. I'm Kathleen O'Kay. I'm the Vice President of Student Services at Sussex County Community College. And I want to thank Jake, I want to thank the Council for giving us this time over the next several weeks to get together and sort of delve a little more deeply into some topics. Although we are used to getting together in affinity meetings and other kinds of group meetings, there's so much that we try to cover in those meetings that we don't really get to go as deeply in. We, like all of you, have had to try to figure out how to reinvent ourselves in this insanely chaotic pandemic year. We have obviously the outcomes and the issues related to the pandemic to deal with. We've got sweeping Title IX changes to deal with. We've got murder hornets to deal with. I mean, we've got an insane number of things, and we're only at the halfway point of 2020. That's the bad news. The good news is that there probably is no sector that is better than community colleges at really pivoting and dealing with chaos and figuring things out and being creative and problem solving. And so today, Sussex, along with Ocean, is going to just take you on a journey and just kind of talk through some of the things that we've done to try to reinvent virtual onboarding and advising. And so from the Sussex side, I just wanted to introduce my 2 colleagues who will be presenting. We have Kathy Galicchio, who is the Director of the Advising and Counseling Center. And we have Anne-Marie Sacco, who is our ADA coordinator, as well as a full-time advisor and counselor in that center. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jerry.
Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you to you, Jake, and to the Council for making this a priority, for making it happen. And thank you to everybody for attending. We really, we're excited to talk about a number of topics today. Before I introduce my compatriots, I wanted to kind of set the table for what Ocean's going to be presenting today. Our journey towards a state that actually prepared us fairly well for operating in the remote environment started in the fall of 2017, when a group of us got together and process mapped all of the steps that it took to become an Ocean County College student. That is the process map of the state of matriculation at Ocean County College in the fall of 2017. And you can see, if you're a full-time student, it's like other processes that you may have heard of in life. It's a 12-step process, right? We kind of felt that was a little excessive because we know, and in particular in some of the concepts that one of our presenters is going to talk about, students these days just don't have a lot of tolerance for the runaround and nonsense. And so what we were able to do was turn this into this. It actually has compressed a little bit more during remote operation. A bunch of things became either optional or just not required anymore. We applied concepts of Six Sigma, and also a lot of the philosophy that's behind what we are doing at Ocean are based on things that a number of us learned when we worked in the for-profit higher education area. We're applying technology, and we're applying a great deal of care to following up and helping students through the process. And so with setting the table there, I'd like to introduce from Ocean, Dr. AJ Trump, who is our Director of Admissions, and Ms. Sheena Hardigan, who is our Director of Enrollment Services. Between the two of them, they have done great work in moving us into the remote area and also in establishing over the years programs and processes that have weathered the storm quite well. So AJ, if you want to jump in, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerry. It's really nice to see so many familiar faces here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to start the conversation out with outcomes. So as Jerry said, we did a lot, and this process started in 17. We halted a 5-year enrollment decline as of the fall 18. We're up this summer over around 13%, and we've been up every summer since 2018. We have had a lot of last-minute enrollments this summer. We've increased the yield of our Ocean County graduating seniors coming to OCC from 26% to 32% over a span of 2 years. That's despite declines in the senior class sizes. As of June 24th, we're slightly more than halfway to matching last year's yield of high school seniors, despite the effects of the pandemic and the fact that there's 165 fewer graduating seniors this year from our service area high schools. And fall 2020, you know, is still kind of to be determined. We were up early, we went flat. We've been a little bit slightly down, but last year we were up over 20% at this time because we had 17 in-person high school registration events on campus, and we just weren't able to do that this year based on the circumstances. We have over 1,000 new students registered already, so we're feeling pretty good about where we're at. So how do we accomplish these outcomes? I'm going to talk a little bit about our College Pathways program. So some of you may be familiar, but if you're not, if you are familiar, bear with me. We piloted and implemented a program that supports and assists high school seniors with transitioning to college. And it's regardless of where they choose to attend. We did some research that 30% of high school seniors in Ocean County did not attend college within 18 months of graduating high school. We designed this program to eliminate barriers to college entrance through small group and one-on-one workshops. And we had discussions with the students on the college selection process, college applications, funding, financial literacy, financial aid. We helped with FAFSA completion, college placement testing, and career degree planning and advisement. The program started with one pilot school in 2017 and 18 and grew to 12 the following year in 18-19. We had 14 last year, 19-20, and next year we're going to have 15 of our 19 area high schools participating. There are 4 major pillars of the program that we deliver at the high schools in small groups, and we do it to all seniors. So before I explain the pillars, you're probably wondering how we got the districts to agree to have every single senior participate, and it was really kind of simple. We had conversations with superintendents and principals and said, that 30% number, we want to reach those students. And we know that those students typically won't attend optional things. So we asked them to please make it mandatory. Let us go to small groups. We want them. We want your students, more of your students, to attain higher degrees. We're not interested in stopping somebody that's bound to a 4-year school other than OCC, even though the program I feel like accomplishes that to some degree inadvertently. But you know, we want to reach that 30. So back to the program. There's 4 pillars of the program. College 101 is the first presentation, and we deliver that to students in the classroom in small groups and parents. All students complete the free application to OCC, and we tell them it's practice. It's surprising how many of them don't know the verbiage of a college application. That also kind of gets their name in our system. And we tell them that if they ever want a summer class or if they ever want to be a student at OCC, we have their info. It also links some things to their account, which I'll talk about in a second, if they want to use our AccuPlacer and take it with them wherever they go. The next piece is financial literacy for college-going students, and our financial aid office talks in small groups. What's the difference between a loan? What's the difference between a grant? And then at night, we have FAFSA workshops at the high school where the parents bring their tax returns and our financial aid staff help them complete the FAFSA. Again, regardless of where they want to go, they can put whatever school code they want in. The high schools really liked that incentive. Also have our advising and career team go out and do some career assessment using Career Coach and have discussions on what level of education a student's going to need to achieve their goals. And those conversations get interesting, and some of the school counselors actually ask us to save or print the students' results so that they can have more meaningful conversations after using that tool. And that tool is very intuitive. It's based on this local, the local economy. It's really a great tool. And we also go out and do AccuPlacer and give some college readiness software, and we do testing like that where they can take. So following the completion of those pillars, students that are choosing to enroll at OCC have basically completed all steps of our matriculation process. We invite them to campus for a special registration event. We include scheduling the classes for the fall, a tour, and lunch, and that's how we had 17 of those days last year. In the past, we would have to wait for students to trek from office to office, complete step after step of the matriculation process. Pathways has really simplified that for new students. They're basically ready to register the minute our fall registration opens. And this led to tremendous amounts of new students registering early for the fall semester, and gives us way more bandwidth to assist students during the busiest time of the registration period at the end of summer. Another step we took was to take down barriers by simplifying the process, like Jerry said, that it took to become a student from 12 steps to 5. For new students during the pandemic, we've reduced that to 3 steps: apply, register, and pay. During the pandemic, my team has been tasked with new student registration, and we've developed a process with our one-stop express student service team, the Hub, and you'll hear from Sheena in a second. And we collaborated very closely on this to assist new students with getting a schedule in the easiest way possible. Our philosophy was the rigor for college should be in the classroom, not during the matriculation process. And we felt like the students are already being challenged enough to learn new technologies through their high school classes being moved online. They're worried about graduation. They're worried about prom. We wanted to be proactive in our thinking, and we did everything that we could to make registration as simple as possible for them, to remove barriers. We did this with the full knowledge we didn't want to sacrifice the student development pieces for students, but we just wanted to separate them from the enrollment process. And more about that in a little bit. So after a student applies, which we had nearly every senior that was part of the Pathways program in our system, we promoted registration through a new student registration survey. And we did it through multiple modalities, including social media, our virtual visit page, acceptance emails, high school counselor channels, texts, emails to all applicants, phone calls. Additionally, it's on our main webpage, featured on our Register for Classes area. And the survey was designed to ask questions a first-year advisor would ask to new students so we could develop initial schedules for them. We knew that one-on-one conversations or group sessions to teach the students how to plan and schedule classes in a virtual way would be difficult to execute, very time and resource consuming. And we also knew that the students had many competing priorities. In the past, we were advising these students on a 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 ratio, and our advising staff had really become inundated with current student requests for assistance. So it made sense for my team, the admissions team, who was also cross-trained in new student advising and registration from our previous high school registration events as part of Pathways, to kind of take on this new student survey registration initiative. So after a student submits the survey, Sheena's team, the Hub, pre-screens each person for readiness and testing requirements, accounting restrictions, if they're a STAR student, any financial aid concerns, and make sure that their application is completed. We work on a spreadsheet that both of our departments have access to and can edit at the same time. Once they're screened by the Hub, prospective students are assigned to an admissions team member that reviews the survey answers and basically registers the student. It's important to note, we don't require a student to show readiness prior to being registered. This would create some big bottlenecks in the processing time. To account for this, we significantly adjusted our multiple measures requirements this year, and almost all new students are meeting them. Very few need testing or anything else. If a student has nothing, we still register them based on the info we have. We reduced our developmental sequence this year. There's only a 1-credit English 098 for developmental English. This gets added on to our English 151, which is our college English class. And we still maintain our Math 023 course. It's a 4-credit developmental algebra. So for students that are not in math intensive majors and don't have scores or readiness documents or tests, we avoid registering them for that class to give them time to get transcripts in and do what they have to do. We're doing coordinated outreach to any newly registered student in developmental courses that hasn't submitted transcripts or any scores, explaining that they may not need to take that extra 1-credit developmental English course. This is also part of the follow-up call with the student. And so you're aware, we actually have most transcripts of our applying students. We ask for them in November and February from our schools. We have very good relationships based on that Pathways program. And we ask for all the seniors that applied during the Pathways program that they send transcripts. So we have most of them. So that's a rare occurrence that we don't have it. NJ STAR students, as you know, can't utilize multiple measures. So if they have nothing and they don't meet the SATs, we'll help them sign up for AccuPlacer using Examity. So as you know, many first schedules are very basic, and the same for nearly all new students. This also helped us simplify the process. We work off a shared drive Excel file, permits editing, like I said, by more than one person at the same time. We enter notes, a registration date on the sheet. That kicks off an email workflow to the student, welcome them to the college. We follow up with a phone call. We welcome them to the college and we explain how they can view their first schedule. We enter notes in our Stark screen and colleague. If a student wants to make changes or discuss their schedule after this, then they can make an appointment with an academic advisor. Many students we're finding are happy with the schedule and they don't reach out, which kind of helps reduce the load on our academic advising office. So they can focus on the more complex issues that continuing students face in transfers. So when we call, we say, congrats, welcome to OCC. Your first set of classes have been scheduled based on what you indicated on the survey. If you have any questions or want to make changes, you can do so until the date, September, the day before the semester starts. That's our, where you don't have any financial penalty. And you can also make an appointment with an academic advisor for assistance. So we then send them a batch email at the end and we welcome them with instructions on how to log into Ocean Connect and send a video of a student planning tutorial. That's a general overview on how we've kind of innovated to reduce barriers and bottlenecks in our enrollment of new students for the fall 2020. And we still do those student development pieces, but I'm sure you'll have questions about that. So that's kind of my piece. I'm going to pass this along, I think, to Sheena now.
If I could just jump in.
Yep.
Second, one of the things that retasking admissions who are typically out recruiting, but because they can't right now, by retasking them to the new students, we have freed up an incredible amount of bandwidth in our advising department and allowed them to focus on continuing students exclusively. And so what they're doing is creating plans for continuing students and then reaching out to the continuing students to go over them with them.
In a half mile, use the right
If they were having to manage new student registration, they never would be able to do this. There's just not enough time in the day. So it's nice to be able to shift things around and you know, to do our best in this environment. So, okay, Sheena, you're up next.
Thank you, Dr. Asiopi, and thank you to Dr. Trump. I'm going to run you through what our one-stop shop, called the Hub, as AJ referred to, looked like before and what we've had to change since going remote, and where our successes and also our failures have been since going remote due to the pandemic. Ocean's one-stop shop, the Hub, was launched in November of 2017. We launched a one-stop at Ocean for 3 reasons. 1 was the decline in enrollment that AJ mentioned. 2 was the changing student. We noticed that Gen Z has to be dealt with very differently than the students of our past. And we also knew that there were a lot of advancements in technology that we could take advantage of in order to streamline our processes and enroll and recruit better. We wanted to work smarter, not harder. So in 2017, the One Stop over at Ocean launched, and our area includes admissions, so helping students complete applications, resetting logins, access to our student portal. We assist with basic advising like change of curriculum. We do drop-in ads, registrations. We accept financial aid documents. We do all of the scanning to our document imaging system. We also have all of the communications coming out of our office. So that is to prospective and new students. We walk them through the process of onboarding, as well as work with them through the time of the start of their class. And that includes payments, payment plans, accessing their financial aid to make sure that they're set up with their documents. So given the structure, we already had a set of cross-trained employees. We were already set up to meet the demands of Gen Z, which is they want instant gratification. They have questions 24/7, and we were already set up to use those technological advances. The best practice of a one-stop is to be 80% virtual and 20% physical. And so we've been striving to reach that goal since 2017. So this pandemic really was a test of how good we were in reaching that goal. The structure of our team is a director and assistant director. I have a full-time communications administrator and 11 part-time enrollment technicians. When we went remote, we had to get each and every one of those individuals up and running on VPN with a soft phone so they could dial outgoing and receive incoming calls to our computers. We knew that we were keeping our same business hours, so we are still open Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Fridays 8 to 5. We started to utilize Microsoft Teams so we could communicate with each other rather quickly, as well as Skype for Business for communications. The structure of our department pre-COVID was that our team would be scheduled in 2-hour blocks. So they might do 2 hours at our front desk. Then they might do 2 hours answering incoming calls. They might do 2 hours answering emails from our inbox. And we use a block schedule to avoid burnout. We used that same block scheduling once we went remote, but of course we had to replace our front desk as we no longer had students that were coming into our building. We replaced that with the new student triaging, which AJ spoke about earlier. Our team went through each list of students that indicated that Ocean County College was their first choice from their high school. Because of the great relationships that AJ's team has built with each of the high schools through Pathways, the counselors sent us over a large bulk list of students that they believed would be attending Ocean based on the students' preferences. What we then did is we looked at each student and identified if they have an active application, if we have their social security number to link to their financial aid, and if any documents are missing, if they have multiple measures or testing in, if they have an accounting restriction, and if there's anything else, if they're a veteran, a STAR student, etc. We then are able to pass those off to AJ's team to complete the new student registration process. So anybody who was scheduled for the front desk, now instead they're doing new student triaging, or they're answering voicemails. Voicemails, you're going to say, doesn't seem like an overwhelming activity that you would spend a lot of time on. However, it sure is. We learned very quickly that through this pandemic, with everybody on a stay at home, students are at home, which is really convenient for a team that's goal is to reach students. So to give you an idea of the communications that we were pushing out and receiving in, at a snapshot, the week of May 18th, our team received on that single day, May 18th, it was a Monday, in case anybody wants to look at a calendar. Our team received 400 emails, which is about answering an email every 2 minutes that were open for those 12 hours that we were open. We received 1,510 incoming phone calls. Of those, 1,414 were during normal business hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's an average of 117 calls an hour. So although the students aren't coming into our front desk, they're reaching out to us, often over and over and over again because they're home, right? So they want an answer. We were able to actually answer about 63% of those phone calls, which is about 74 calls an hour, which is, I think, pretty good. We've actually moved resources from other areas on campus that were not as busy to assist us in answering those phone calls. From a student survey that we had done, we know that our students would much prefer to have a nice, friendly voice answering the phone than have the person know the answer. And so for that reason, we felt comfortable moving resources so that they could pick up the phone, listen to the person's concern, direct them appropriately if they could. If not, we take it down as a message. And then as indicated, we have somebody block scheduled to return calls for voicemails. We do outgoing calls out of our department. So our team calls each person that inquires or applies to the college immediately. Now, before we went remote, we were calling our applicants within 1 day of applying and our inquiries within 1 day of applying. As many of you probably know, a student is 400% more likely to enroll in your institution if you reach them within an hour. I'm pleased to report that since going remote, we are still reaching students within 1 day of their initial inquiry or initial application, which is obviously benefiting our matriculation process. Another advantage that we had in our court going into remote operations is the use of AI. Many of you may have heard us talk about Reggie, who is my favorite employee. He is our chat bot, and he utilizes augmented intelligence to text message back and forth with our students in a modality in which they're already comfortable. Reggie has put in his work since we've gone remote. The first week that we went remote, Reggie received over 11,000 incoming text messages. The students had questions and they were asking Reggie, which is amazing because 26% of the messages that he receives are not during office hours. Our students are asking questions at 10 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning, and I can't get people to work during those hours. So having a chatbot is a really resourceful way of getting our students' questions answered immediately, which is what they expect, without using resources. We send introduction text to our students as soon as they inquire or apply that same day. We get about 400 to 500 of those a week. We also utilize Reggie in order to send out some different kinds of surveys. We surveyed our students to make sure they had the technology access that they would need. Do you have internet? Do you have a laptop? Do you have a microphone and a webcam? And then we were able to work with the students that didn't to get them those, the computers that they needed, the laptops that they needed. We also we announced that commencement was canceled because it had to be. We then did a survey to our students. Would you be interested in a virtual commencement? We had about 40 to 60% engagement rates on each of those surveys, which is far greater than what we would usually get. So the students were very interested in speaking with us and engaging with us in a modality in which they were comfortable. Just to kind of wrap it up, some of the lessons that we've learned since going remote, because it really has been trials and tribulations, learning, throwing things at the wall and see if they stick, right? We've learned that we've gotten a lot more requests with technology. My computer doesn't work. My Canvas isn't working. I can't post an assignment. My password. So we've become very well versed in handling those questions as well. Our college does not have an operator, so we've become an operator. In addition, we're getting a full scope of questions, and I'm very glad that I have a very well-trained, cross-trained team. Our questions have ranged obviously from your admissions and registration to advising, to EOF, testing, athletics, COVID testing on campus. We've gotten all of those kinds of questions because not every office has soft phones. And so we've been there to be able to answer that for the students. Our students are more likely to answer now when we call than they were when we were in the office. A usual answer rate was about 10 to 12% in the office, and we're at about 30 to 40% now since going virtual. And again, they're home. They're answering the phones because they don't have anything else to do, which is fantastic for us because we can help them get through the enrollment process faster and expedite them. We've found that taking a more intrusive approach to enrollment while encouraging the student development has been really beneficial, and the students have been appreciative. We get a lot more thank yous than usual when you're remote. Students can't stand in front of you and say, thank you for this paper, thank you for helping me. But I would say each day I scroll through our inbox, and like I said, we get hundreds of emails. When they get registered, when we answer a question, they're writing back just to say thank you, which I think is really encouraging of this generation of students that we have coming in, but it's also really validating that the work that we're doing since going remote especially is beneficial, and it's helping our students. Dr. Rasiopi, did I miss anything of importance you'd like to add?
No, you did not. Thank you so much. I think it's time to pass the torch to our colleagues from Sussex.
All right. So Kathy, I think we're going to start with you.
All right. So we will describe ourselves as the little engine that could in the upper corner of New Jersey. and I'm going to ask Anne-Marie, she's actually going to share our screen. So just going to, Anne-Marie and I talked about this before, we started our session, that we don't claim to have cornered the market or that we're doing anything any better or than anybody else. And I applaud all of you for the work that you're doing, especially in these trying times and how we've had to pivot on a dime to change some of the ways that we reach out to students. But Sheena, I will echo your comments there about the thank yous. We have found that too. I know Anne-Marie will say that as well. So I'm just going to talk to you about some of the ways that we engage with our students more remotely, and then talk to you more specifically about our SOAR program, SOAR standing for Student Orientation, Advising, and Registration, and how we actually flip that to a virtual onboarding process here at Sussex. So one of the things that we actually do is we have a chat feature that we have a live chat with an advisor, and we house that Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. And our admissions office equally has the same chat feature. And Sheena, that's where we're getting a lot of those questions that you're talking about. Everything from soup to nuts, we kind of become customer service, answering questions about where's the COVID testing, or where can I go and get a book, so we become answering all of those. And we found that the uptick in the use of our chat feature has gone up quite a bit since we've gone remote. And again, it's a nice way for students to be able to interact with us. When that chat feature is off, it actually converts to an email process where a student can actually email us. So we do kind of have that 24/7 ability for them to be able to reach us. So Anne-Marie, if you want to move to the next screen. This is our Zoom remote advising. I'm sure some of you are also doing similar to that, but we have Zoom remote advising hours where we have an advisor manning that open Zoom desk. And oftentimes we'll divert a person from a chat session into our Zoom remote advising. We find we're getting too deep in the weeds and something we really can't handle in a chat. When we need to screen share, we'll say, hey, join us in one of our Zoom remote advising sessions, and we'll actually turn that student from the chat over into our Zoom remote advising. So this information that you're seeing here on your screen is what sits on our website, and we actually send this information out to students through Constant Contact. We probably do that like every several weeks just to remind students that they have the ability to kind of interact with us that way as well. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about SOAR. And I'm going to let Anne-Marie really get deeper into context into this. But SOAR actually has been our onboarding process at Sussex. This is actually our 5th summer of doing SOAR. This is ideally how we like all of our new incoming students to kind of start with us. It's where we teach them all the basic principles of academic advising, understanding, program sequencing. But of course, this year everything changed. So we really had to flip our SOAR concept to be able to deliver it in a remote setting. We were fortunate that a year ago, we did away, or I want to say did away, we changed our multi-measure approach to readiness and assessing college readiness. And while at the time we probably went to that a little bit kicking and screaming, oh boy, now am I so glad that we did, because it really has helped in this process of onboarding students into our SOAR program, especially with the lack of AccuPlace or having a remote virtual capability. So I'm going to pass it now to Anne-Marie, because there is like a whole step that a student goes through before they the actual night of a SOAR session. And we use Eventbrite for students to register for our SOAR sessions. And there's a series of questions in Eventbrite that we ask them, kind of similarly, AJ, to what you asked them in your registration content. What are you planning on studying? Or have you taken AP classes? Have you taken the SATs? So we actually then pull that information. Eventbrite actually allows to be able to download that information into an Excel spreadsheet. So then we share that information amongst the center staff as we get students from the point of registering to attend a SOAR session to actually being at the SOAR session itself. So I'm going to pass it to Anne-Marie. She will now share with you the continuing evolution that SOAR has gone through since we flipped it remote, because it's probably in about version number 8 about now. So I will let her, because she really is the one who did a lot of that contact. So Anne-Marie, take it away.
So as Kathy said, we've kind of been evolving with how our SOAR is implemented. So as all of you, I'm sure, are seeing different trends with students and seeing what's working and not working, the same with us. And we're trying to kind of shift to the student and make it more accessible and the path of least resistance for them. So our SOAR, like Kathy said, we were always doing the last few summers. So when we initially kind of knew we were going remote, we said, okay, well, let's just kind of shift this in-person event of orientation, advising, and registration and make it virtual. So how do we do that? So we decided that we would record a voiceover of a Prezi similar to a PowerPoint and have videos that were implemented into there. Before we actually went remote, we had gotten together with our IT department, and we had filmed videos of ourselves talking, saying, this is how you register, and then it would be a voiceover of us going through on our portal system and showing students how to register, and this is how you find who your advisor is, and all these little video vignettes that then we could implement into our SOAR. So at our traditional SOARs that we had prior to the pandemic, they would last maybe 2 to 3 hours. It was a full tour of campus. They got their student IDs, their parking permits. At the end, they registered. They were all set to go. The only thing they needed to do from there was order their books and come on the first day of class. We tried to do it this method for us initially. It was way too long. We lost the students. They were, at home. They weren't paying attention, and rightfully so. We realized after our first 2 sessions, we have them about twice a week. So we realized after the first 2, all right, we have to shift this. We have to make it more condensed, a little bit more to the point, and more to the actual registration process that they're looking to do with us. We do have a foundations course that all freshmen take with us. So we kind of shifted it a little bit more of a lot of the information that they may have been getting from us will now kind of be taught to them in that foundations class, which it already was previous years, but we liked to really engage with them when they were on campus with us for our SOAR to kind of go over all of that stuff at the same time. But because of the circumstances of the pandemic, we can't go over everything like we could have before, just the important things. So like Kathy said before, a student actually attends a virtual SOAR, they would have filled out our Eventbrite, let us know if they took the SATs, let us know what their high school GPA was, send that to us. We have our admissions department that we work with to see what those scores are, what that GPA is. We have an advisor reach out to the student and say, these are some of our placement measures, take a look at them. Call me back when you're done. They'll call back. Sometimes we have to call them back. We are using Google Voice to do texting and calling, and like I'm sure other schools are experiencing, the texting feature is really helpful with students. Once they're all set to go the day before a SOAR, they get a reminder email with the Zoom link, and then the day of, they get a text message with the Zoom link again. We've had pretty good rates of students attending the sessions. We capped them at 22 students. With about 2 advisors, sometimes 3 if we have a third that's available. When they come into the Zoom session, it's just a quick introduction of ourselves. We introduce them. We actually have SOAR leaders that join us, which are students that have been trained by us, who know the information of registration, advising, all of that. So the student leaders really give a good perspective to them. If we have some students who might be interested in athletics, clubs on campus, they'll talk to them about those things. Then we actually start our voiceover presentation, which was cut from about 40 minutes to now it's about 15. So it goes over some stuff about financial aid, billing, that information about before classes, your books, email, stuff like that. Then we pause the presentation. We have them log into their portals. So before the student comes to a Zoom, they'll actually get their password information. So they'll be able to log themselves in. And we continue with the presentation and talk about how they read their course curriculums. So we have a suggested sequence for them. We go off of that first semester sequence, unless of course they're taking a developmental English or math course or AP, all that other stuff, transfer credits. Then we split the room into 3 different breakout sessions. So if there's 3 advisors, 3, if there's less than the 2. And we found that to be really helpful. Students do like to unmute themselves and talk. So the more breakout rooms we can have with smaller amounts of students, it's really helpful to be able to engage and say, hey, Fred, how are you doing? Hey, Keith, you know, do you need any help? And then on the back end from us, we're checking their portal to see if they're registering, how it's going. Before they leave, we make sure that it's good to go, and then they're headed out. After that, they get a phone call or an email follow-up, depending on if changes need to be made, or if we said in the session, okay, we need to talk a little bit more about what you want to do. Let's, you know, follow up later. And then the only thing after that is our SOAR leaders do call them about a month later saying, hey, did you have any questions that you thought of in the last month? So, you know, do you have the Gmail app on your phone downloaded for your email? You know, have you looked at your books? Just kind of stuff like that to really engage with them, make sure they're ready to go, because it is such a difficult time for students. We knew the patterns of our students when we were in person. You know, they'd come in at X, Y, and Z times in between classes here. You know, they make appointments at these times primarily. And now we've kind of been getting back on that path of what they need from us. We kind of lost it for a few weeks and felt like we needed to really find out how we could help them. And luckily now we're getting in that pattern, as I'm sure, like Kathy said, most of you are as well. This is just a picture from one of our SOARs. The amount of students when they come in initially, we had like this whole new beginning about this is how you use Zoom, you know, mute yourself, do the video. They know how to use it. They were using it in school. They're good to go. We share the screen, do the presentation, and then at the end, like I said, they just head out, and then they are happy that they're ready to go for the fall. They were with us for, it's about an hour and a half, depending on when the last student leaves. It's not asking that much of their time, and it's helpful for us because we can get a good amount of students, you know, about 50 students a week registered, instead of having to do individual conversations with every student multiple times during the day. So I'll pass it back to you, Kathy, if there's anything that I missed from that.
The other thing that we realize is that especially with this group of students coming in this fall, is parents have a lot of questions, and rightfully so. They're probably a little bit more anxious than any other given year, just given everything that their students actually had just gone through just to complete high school. So we actually started offering parent communication discussion sessions. So once our students go through a SOAR session, the parent that gets invited to one of our parent connection sessions, which I host every other Wednesday evening through Zoom. And those have been really kind of fun. They're really kind of off script. I don't really have a script that I follow. It's just, hey, I'm here, I'm a parent too. I know what this is like. What questions do you have? How can we be of help? Because as we all know, they are a key person in the success of their students' performance at Sussex. So we want to engage with them. We want to become BFFs with them in the beginning. I mean, all FERPA things related, but we know that they are a stakeholder in their children's education. So we started hosting those sessions, and I'm currently working on a way of spinning our new parent orientation, which we typically host in August, to a virtual format too. So like everybody else, we're like just spinning all of these constant things in the air just to be able to provide those things that we had done in person.
Yeah, so that's it for Sussex. So I don't know if we want to go to questions or.
Sure. How about we do that? We can do this in a couple of ways. If any of you have any questions that come to the top of mind, we could ask them now. I don't know if we'll be flooded, or if you have a question as people are asking other questions and responding and we don't want to talk over each other, we can type questions in the chat box and I can monitor that and present the questions when the time presents. But I'll take the advantage or the privilege of having the floor right now. I'll ask a question of our colleagues at Ocean and Sussex. We heard Kathy just talk about the family chats that she's hosting. I'm wondering for Sussex, what advice would you have for our colleagues throughout the state on strengthening those relationships with families? And then the flip side of the question for our folks at Ocean, what advice would you have for our colleges on strengthening those relationships with our high school guidance counselors, teachers, and principals and administrators of that like? So Kathy at Sussex, if you folks can start with that, and then we'll go to Ocean on the high school relationship side.
You're muted, Kath.
How often have we all done that? More time than I care to mention. So Jake, when you said that, my initial thought was just don't forget about them, and make sure that you are outreaching to them as well, and not assume that they know, you know, because they do have so many questions, and so that was where my head was at when I started to think about these little connection sessions to host them, and just really engage with them. I mean, that's really one thing that Sussex, it's kind of something that we're really proud of is that, like, that outreach and that touch and that support. And we want to extend that to the family members as well. So it just seems like something natural to do. So just don't forget about that group of people, because I think they're really important to connect with.
And I was going to just add that, you know, generally speaking, for a parent to actually take the time to pick up the phone, it's generally because they're scared or because they're angry, right? I mean, those are usually the motivators for them to actually pick up the phone. And I remember years ago when I ran the academic probation program, I had a mother call, the letter had come in the mail for her son. The son was on probation. Of course, she opened the letter, she read the letter, she knew the son was on probation. And she called me, and of course, initially she's asking a lot of questions that because of FERPA, I couldn't answer. But once I let her get through that stage of it, what I did is I just started answering questions or talking her through the different stages of probation and what it actually means if you're on probation 1, and what does it mean if you're on probation 2. And in just taking her through the generalities, separate from any FERPA violations, it really calmed her down. When she understood, you know, probation 1 didn't mean you're kicked out. When she understood the basics, it calmed her down, it calmed down the process. So we have to be mindful of FERPA, but we also have to understand these are scared parents who are really just want the best for their students, and we have to do what we can do to sort of allay those fears.
One of the other things that we did as well, we in our Canvas content, that's our LMS for online learning, we have an advising shell in there, and we also have an orientation shell in there with all of this information. And we found that there's no proprietary type of information in there, that you couldn't share that information with a parent as well. So we actually are going to be sharing those public links to parents so that they can get under the hood and say, oh, this is how you order a book. Oh, here's how you contact financial aid. Because those aren't bound by FERPA, and you're right, Kathleen, you have to be careful some of these conversations you have, but their questions are more of a general nature. So give them the information so that they're, you know, can answer some of their questions that they have as well.
Is it time for Ocean now? Okay. I'll chime in on I'll chime in on the basically getting a high school counselors, principals, superintendents to cooperate with you. You have to deliver value. And when we initially went in to the pilot high school for the Pathways program, the Pathways program it didn't originate with Ocean County College. It originated as the College Connection program at Austin Community College in Austin, Texas, back in 2004. I was familiar with it there. We used that as the inspiration for what we've created here. But one of the great things that I had years of data in Austin to share with the high school counselors of how the program would benefit their students. And so when we went in and said, hey, we want to do this with your students, we said, by the way, this program is inspired by this program in Austin. And over the first 4 years of the program in Austin, they saw the high school graduation rate increase in their area by 11%. They also saw the college university enrollments directly after high school increase by 21%. Now, what I didn't tell them is Austin County College saw ACC enrollments after high school increase by 56%. They didn't really need to know that. But it's not relevant to what we were trying to do, is to say, look, we're trying to go after this group that we know if we just leave them to themselves, they're not going to go to college, and they're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities in life. And so what we want to do is partner with you to get them there. And I think if AJ, if you want to chime in a little bit on that, I think usually when we go to our high school partners, we go with something in our hands that's meaningful and tangible.
Barry, I think you hit the nail on the head. One hand washes the other, and we always kind of make that point with the high schools. We always give a little bit, and they're more willing to give to us then. And we always say you're our partners. I started in this role, and the first thing that I did as director of admissions was make appointments to go around to every single guidance staff, talk to them about all the great things we were doing. We pitched pathways, and we made some really great connections. And then people started calling and saying, hey, I had this affinity group for guidance directors in the county that I used to live in, but there's not one in Ocean County. Do you think you could start it? And I was like, absolutely, I'll buy you lunch. Well, how often are we going to do it? Quarterly. Great. I buy them lunch. They come onto my campus with me in the room, and the guidance directors talk about everything under the sun. And I'm the first one from the college perspective, the higher ed perspective, that gets to respond. So being able to make those kind of relationships, you know, I came from an athletic background. Shout out Heather Congers on here, athletic director from Burlington. You know, I learned very quickly how to, you know, and it is kind of a sales approach, you know, when you're recruiting student athletes, you know, it's give and take. Here's what the benefit of a community college is. You know, we want to be your partner. We want to make you better. We want to help you. Look how many of your students come to us. You know, your students are our students. That's the approach I've always taken. You know, and we have guidance luncheons. We do a lot with our guidance counselors and to make those connections. And then they come to us first when they have questions. And they're willing, like Sheena said, I mean, they're giving me lists of their students that are coming to OCC. I mean, I'm like, and they're giving me their high school seniors for 4 or more hours, every single one of them, for 4 hours with each one of them in small groups every single year. I mean, I can't ask for more as a director of admissions. Those relationships that you make with those guidance counselors are critical. It just takes a little bit of a good sales approach and a way to kind of see what can you do for them, like those FAFSA workshops, they love that. That then maybe when you ask for something, they'll be willing to say, yeah, we can do that for you. It's a little give and take.
Thank you, folks. I think if I can just synthesize for a second, being that I'm the the amateur of the group, not having a student services background, I think the approach here, though, about an asset approach as opposed to a deficit approach, and what I mean by that is, you know, the Pathways project is intended to, one, help the high schools, as you just described, Dr. Trump and Dr. Recipe. That's number one. But the other part of it too is, regardless of if you get a population of 100 students who participate, and of that 100, 35 come to Ocean and the other 65 go to a different institution, it's still worth it to you because you got those 35 students as opposed to you wouldn't have gotten them at all. So it's an asset approach as opposed to a deficit approach. And if we have more thinking like that nationally, we could see more community colleges build partnerships like this and build programs like this where they're serving the community in their names, right? So thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise on that. And Kathy and Kathleen, thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise and experiences in working with parents and giving them the opportunity to vent their frustrations, share their fears, but then explain the process and just let them know you're here for them. I can't tell you because of the law, but let me just tell you how it works. Folks, are there other questions on the line? We're coming up against 4 o'clock, but I want to see if there are any other questions on the line for our facilitators, presenters today. And if not, I have a couple questions for all of you very quickly. if everybody can see my screen okay. Might not need to do a deep dive now, but I'd like everybody on the line, if you have a couple moments to reflect on what we learned today, what are some of those key takeaways that you heard that you think might be helpful in the work that you're doing in onboarding students, providing advisement, outreach to families, outreach to high schools. Think about what some of those key takeaways are. And is there a role, and perhaps since we're up against it, this is something you could email to me or give me a call. Is there a role we can work with together collectively, whether it's through our larger student services affinity group, if it's through the Center for Student Success and the council? Is there something we can do to help all the colleges in this way? And are there any topics that you've heard today that would lend themselves from further discussion, maybe having another one of these sessions specifically on one of these topics?
I can speak, Jake. I know that there's a push right now for the community colleges to put out a marketing campaign all together to get the message across that we care and we're here for you. I think that's vitally important for enrollment to come across with one clear message. I think a lot of students right now are not sure of their plans for the fall. They don't know if they're going to be going to their four-year institution or going back to their four-year institution. People are unemployed and underemployed. I think one message would really benefit all of us just on the quality of education at a community college, the cost. If you're going to be sitting on your couch taking classes, they should be from your local community college. You don't need to go to a four-year institution for those same classes that you're taking in the same place. So one big marketing effort, I think, putting us together with one voice, and I know that's on the radar, I think would be really helpful in getting the word out about us.
That's a great point. Thank you. And, you know, added to that is the unique advantage we have in New Jersey with our financial aid programs, both merit-based and need-based, and particularly CCOG, which we could see a significant uptick in folks utilizing because of the economic situation that they're in. We are working on that. Colleagues in the council are working with some folks. I know from our community colleges, Jan Kirsten at Ocean is really the lead on that. We have a small group of advancement folks who are helping us with it. With Interact Communications, some of you may have heard the name, a pretty nationally well-known group that specializes in working with community colleges to develop this one voice campaign that the council can then work with the community colleges in the state to help elevate the image of the community colleges.
I'll make another comment, just dovetailing off of what Sheena said as well, is, you know, one of the things that we are noticing, which I think is why those efforts would be really helpful, is the behavior of students are that they're waiting later to register. We noticed that with our summer registrations, we'd see, you know, spikes, you know, a week out from the session starting, and we're anticipating that that will be the same for the fall. Someone commented in the chat comment about streamlining your processes, and I'm going to echo that. And Ocean, you're doing great things with that, and we're looking at that as well, because you have to, or you're going to get buried in August if you don't streamline some of those and cut down on the steps. You know, your advice of apply, register, pay. Like, seriously, that's I would say to everybody that that's really something to kind of think about, because with that late registration behavior, August could be an unbearable month if you don't get prepared for that. It's like the tsunami's coming, so get ready.
Just to add to that, if I may, as AJ mentioned in his presentation, from all 14 of our pathway schools, we got lists of students who who told their high school counselor that they're going to come to Ocean. Every single one of them is higher. Some of them double what we got last year. It sounds like the intention is there, at least in our area. And I doubt that it is unique to our area. I do think that we're going to see a much bigger freshman class this year than we have in previous years.
We already have more students at 2 of our county high schools than we had at census last year. So I have a feeling Jerry's right.
Thank you, folks. And any other questions or comments before we call it a Zoom meeting session? And some of you get started on your weekends. Well, folks, thanks so much again to our panelists, presenters from Sussex County Community College, Ocean County College. Thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom and expertise with us. We appreciate it. I hope all of you found this beneficial. We're going to be doing these again with different colleges sharing their innovations and their practices in a number of areas. If more than welcome to join us for these going forward. I think we're off next week because it's leading up to 4th of July. But every Thursday, 3 o'clock, with the exception of next week in July, we'll be doing these, and it's the same Zoom link. So thank you all again very much. We'll get the webinar recording out to you as soon as it's available. And if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to reach out to me at the center, and I can funnel those questions to the folks at Ocean and or Sussex as needed. With that, great to see everybody. Hope everybody's healthy and happy. And stay safe, and we'll see everybody soon. Thanks again.